You know, there's always been something about music that has really just been like an integral part of my life. I feel like I'm listening to it every second of the day. I listen to it when I'm in the shower, when I'm getting dressed in the morning. I listen to it as I'm doing any sort of work. Music has always been something that's just been a huge presence in my life, almost as much as reading. And of course, when I read, I always have music on, whether it be on the TV or in my headphones or even my earbuds, there's always music. And as I was thinking about what video to record this week, I was really trying to think of what are some things that I can include. And I thought a really fun video would be to transform my music taste, because I listen to a lot of different genres, into the books that I read. So that's this video. We are going to be transforming my music taste. I'm gonna give you some examples of albums and the books I think go best with them for whatever reason. I'm gonna try to get specific to the songs. We're also gonna make it a little bit more general. So they're not gonna be perfect in every aspect, but again, I think they just go together in my mind for some reason. Okay, that's a video. Grab a snack, pull up. I hope you enjoy it. The very first album I have is the Lumineers, their self-titled album. This is the album with Ho Hey and Slow It Down and Stubborn Love, like the iconic Lumineer songs, right? I adore this album so much. It is my favorite album of theirs. I was listening to this album as I'm trying to figure out what book really goes with this album in terms of like vibe and longing and yearning and love, because like that's just Lumineers all together. Their songs are filled with such yearning and such romance that I needed a book that also encapsulated it. And I thought I had the perfect one until I saw this book, and that is Wolf Song by TJ Klune. I could spend hours talking about Wolf Song. Wolf Song's one of my favorite TJ Klune books, okay? I like this more than I like House on the Cerulean Sea, which is the one people tend to really favor. But for me, it's always been Wolf Song. Wolf Song follows our main character, Ox, who's always kind of stuck out in life. His dad used to call him dumb and slow, and he internalized that until one day when he's walking home, a family is moving in near him and his mom, and he meets Joe, this young kind of rowdy kid who runs up to him and becomes obsessed with Ox. And in that first meeting, they create this bond that travels through the years. And it's also dealing with grief and loss as a murderer comes to town and rips a hole into this idyllic life that Ox had just started to build for himself. This is a poetic book. It is filled with yearning. It is filled with joy and love and healing, but it is also something that will just like hit you in the core of your heart. Anything TJ Klune writes makes me cry, and every time I read Wolf Song, I cry, which is why I've not finished the series, because I'm not ready to be emotionally destroyed, even though I know TJ Klune will heal my heart. He's just that good, okay? And Wolf Song is, again, my favorite of TJ Klune's works. These two, match made in heaven, because Ox's point of view in this, and this is spoiler free for all of these recommendations, Ox's point of view is just filled with this sense of romance and how he describes everything, and how TJ Klune writes this world. It is filled with this romantic view, even in the darkest parts and the grief-filled part. We see this love present throughout the book. The setting of it being like very earthy and rural, I think really goes well with the twang of the Lumineers sound, which is also very folk, leaning sometimes a little bluesy, but definitely like indie folk rock, and these pair so well together. And the yearning, oh my god, Ox's yearning, especially in the second half of this book, just had me by a grip. If I had to choose a song from this album to pair specifically with this song, I might say Slow It Down. Just the yearning between Ox and Joe, and their relationship, and the easiness of it, and also the hardship of it, the wanting to slow these moments down, to sink into these moments, but the world also being very heavy and hard at times. Oh my god. Feelings, the characters, all I think really go well with the Lumineer album. The next one, also yearning, also romantic, but a totally different sound, and that is Clouded by This Wild Life. This is probably my favorite album. I know every song start to finish on this one. It's an album that I had found by kind of like circumstance, a coincidence. I was at Warped Tour and I was going to see another band and they had shouted out This Wild Life because they play a lot of acoustic songs. The band I was gonna sing is like very heavy metal, post-hardcore, and they shouted them out saying like, kudos on you for playing an acoustic set next to us as we're warming up. Everyone go check them out. And I bought their CD. And when I tell you, I listened to this album on repeat. I've listened to this album on repeat multiple times. Again, I could sing you every song forward and backwards. And this is an album that is filled with both breakups and happiness and yearning to kind of like get back to the happy days and healing. And I think the book that really fits this is Hold Still by Nina LaCour. This is her debut novel. Hold Still is a novel that follows our main character, Caitlin, after the night where her best friend Ingrid commits suicide. And Caitlin is left to kind of pick up the pieces of her life and to kind of really look at how this all happened and dealing with the grief and the loss of Ingrid in her life, who she may or may not have held greater feelings for. This is a book that is kind of hard to read because the grief that Caitlin experiences is so raw and real. It's told through Caitlin's journals and as she's like digging more into Ingrid's life and to Ingrid's drawings and the pieces left of her best friend and what led to her suicide. Like all Nina LaCour novels, it's very introspective. It's very careful in its depictions. It's a little slow, but not in the sense of boring, but more in the sense of really being thorough with these emotions that I think are so heavy, but also a lot of people feel. But also it's about how Caitlin is learning to heal from these events and how to move on in her life without her best friend, which I think very much fits well with the concept of this album of yearning for the past, yearning for happiness, but also learning how to let go when these relationships are over and they're no longer serving you. If I had to pair a song from this album with this book, it would have to be Roots and Branches. There's just something about, again, that yearning for a time where everything was good and filled with love, but also that it's overwhelming how the bad things can stick around and how it can really start to affect you, but that there's always connections, there's always roots for you to return to and to kind of hold you steady, which I think is also a theme in a lot of Nina LaCour's novels, but I think especially true in Hold Still, which is again about that kind of, title implies, holding still, holding on to these memories, but also again letting them go when the person's gone. I'm not gonna lie, you might think I'm a little crazy for this next one, but this is also a no skip album for me, and that is Sour by Olivia Rodrigo. This girl, she came out with an absolute banger for her debut album. I have devoured this album so many times. I love all the songs. My only complaint is I think the arrangement on this album's a little weird, but every song's a banger. And as I was thinking, what book would go with Sour? Because Sour is a notoriously known breakup album filled with anger and sadness and grief and just rage. And as I was sitting and thinking, the book I found that fit the most, particularly for its main character, is Immortal Dark by Tigges Girma. If you somehow missed me explaining what Immortal Dark is last year at the beginning of this year, this is a book where we're following our main character, Kitten, who is trying to find her twin sister, who was kidnapped by a vampire. Because in this society, vampires exist. And Kitten comes from a long line of families who are closely connected to vampires, in which they can only drink the blood of descendants from Kitten's family and families like hers. And Kitten has spent her entire life trying to stay away. But when her sister goes missing, she must go into the heart of the academy where the vampires and the next heirs are trained together to find out what happened to her sister. And I think Kitten is the perfect person to pair up with what Olivia Rodrigo was talking about and the wide shift of range and moods that's going on in here. Oh my god. And I'm not even talking about the main couple in this, which I definitely think there's a whole bunch of songs on here you could apply to the main love interest, but all of Kitten's relationships in this story and continuing into the sequel, that there is just this anger. It's like deep seated in her person over what she's been through and what's going on. There's this anger towards people. Disguised beneath that anger is this kind of like this hurt, this deep emotional hurt where Kitten's trying to work through her demons and mourning the loss of these relationships, despite the fact that she tried so hard to hold on and tried to give everything into her being for these relationships, only to be scorned in the end. And I think that fits a lot of the emotions behind Sour, in that we do have a lot of songs that are filled with hatred and like fuck you energy, but there's also a lot of songs that are filled with a kind of remorse, with yearning, and kind of a deep-rooted sadness that I think is very much present in Kitten's character. If I had to pick a song from this album to pair specifically with this book, I would say this one's hard. This one's really, really hard. I would probably have to say Happier, or maybe Enough for You. But again, wide range of emotion on this album that I think very much will fit the wide range of emotions that Kitten has and that you will have reading this book, because you know, I adore her. You should go read her. One of my favorite books I read last year. I've been really nice in a lot of my picks. They've been probably my more mellow side of my music taste, but I'm also a huge metalhead and a screamo fan and a post-hardcore fan and all the range of above. And so my next album is Dispose by The Plot in You. This album, again, all of these albums I've shown you are no skips albums, and this one in particular, I love The Plot in You. And this is my favorite album from them. Not only because of the beautiful cover, look at her, she is stunning, but the sound, The Plot in You just has this unique sound that I think a lot of bands are always searching for. But the moment The Plot in You comes on, they just get you. They're cinematic almost in their music, and the way that emotion plays out in this album, because it's an album that is focused on rage, but not in like this loud and explosive way, but like a quiet simmering until it boils over type of rage. And we see these songs that are like very much like, again, kind of fuck you energy and just like this anger, but also a kind of a yearning for freedom, a yearning to move on, to let go, but something keeps like digging its claws in you and dragging you back down and fighting against that. And of course, the best book to pair with this is one of my favorite reads ever, and it's Chain Gang All-Star by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah. Chain Gang All-Stars is a sci-fi dystopian novel that follows two inmates who are involved in a series of death games where every person on death row gets an opportunity to either stay on death row in this torturous prison system or to join these death games and fight for their freedom, where if they win 10 consecutive matches, they get true freedom, where they get released. And we're following two characters, Loretta Thurwar and her girlfriend Hamara Stacker, who are on the verge of winning true freedom. And we're following Loretta specifically as she's going through this journey to her final few matches and potentially earning her freedom. However, we're also getting a look at the society that has created this almost Hunger Games-esque system with these prisoners, and it's a book that really takes a look at the societal creation of the prison system and how, and based in the US's real problems within these systems, and how it treats people and how it is extremely skewed to target Black Americans. And this book has a lot of statistics around that. It is heart-wrenching and it is horrifying to experience. And there's a moment in this book that just chills me to my spine to this day. And I think it's one of the most important reads ever. These two match made in heaven, because this book is all about fighting for your freedom, clawing it back from the people who are systematically trying to oppress you and to take your life, holding up a big middle finger to them and fighting back every step of the way till you survive. And that is what Dispose is all about, disposing the people who rather see you fall and pushing yourself into freedom despite those claws. If I had to pick a song from this one to pair with Chain Gang All-Star, there's so many to pick from. It could be Rigged, it could be I Always Wanted to Leave, it would be I Feel Nothing. Every song I feel like goes with this book so well. Again, just the slow build of what is happening in this story and how each of these songs like slowly start to build and build and build until we get the drop where we're just deep-seated into that rage. These two go so well together. All right, and the very last pairing I have for you, also leaning into my more rock side, I could not do a video like this without including this band, and that is of course Paramore, and I believe this is their debut album, All We Know Is Falling. There are so many Paramore albums I could include in this video because I love Paramore. We love Hayley Williams in this house, okay? She is an ally through and through, and her music, oh my god, her voice, everything about her. We love her. We stan her in this household, okay? This album, phenomenal. It's iconic. It includes some of her best soundtrack, and the fact that this came out in 2005, which I don't want to talk about, that I in fact remember that and remember when they hit the scene and how insane it was and how many waves they've made since then. And the theme of this album I think this album follows a theme that a lot of the other albums kind of like tend to have a couple themes going on. This one's really about like this internal self-doubt, this longing to return but not knowing how to reach those goals or how to go back or to reach out again to people, to connections, to relationships, to dreams. It's this feeling of kind of an immense weight on your shoulders, and how do you deal with that and how do you overcome that? And this is another one that I was really thinking long and hard about which book I want to pair with this, and I paired it with another favorite, and that is The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson. So if you don't know, The Raven Scholar is a book I think you should go in as blind as possible to, but for a slight little overview, we're following our main character Nima, who is a scholar to the king, essentially. And in this world, the emperor is only allowed to be emperor for so long. And where this story starts is the emperor is at the end of his term, and instead of like choosing through like bloodline or something, there is a trial where each segment of the society gets to put forth a champion and go through a series of trials. Nima is not involved in these trials until the Raven candidate is murdered, and Nima is not only put in charge to figure out who killed the Raven candidate, but also she becomes a new Raven candidate in a series of games that could be potentially deadly. But of course, there is more going on than meets the eye, and that's all I will say about this book, because again, it's so much better if you go into this book knowing nothing and letting the world unravel for you. And I think the themes of All We Know Is Falling really goes well with Nima's whole psychology throughout the book, because we're very much following a character who is constantly stuck in this circle of doubt, being put off foot and not knowing where she stands and not knowing what power she has to stand up against these monoliths of power, these monoliths of societal structures that she's found herself complacent in for so long, and is now having to doubt her stability and fight for her life in a myriad of situations. And so I think it just goes so well with the self-doubt and the pressure that we see Hayley Williams and the rest of Paramore like struggle through in the album. And of course, if I had to pick a song to go to pair these two together, I would definitely do My Heart. I think that just really fits Nima the most in this book, especially when you take into account the relationship to a certain someone throughout this book. I feel like that's their song. That's their song. That's her feeling through most of this book. And again, it's just so phenomenally done. Please go read it. Please go listen to this album. Listen to this album as you read it. I think they go hand in hand together so much. Okay, these are all the albums that I think correlate my taste in books. I can't hold these both up because they're very awkward to each other, but I promise here. Hold on, let's see if we can actually, this is the closest we're gonna get to at least holding my taste in books versus my taste in albums. I think they all pair well with each other in some way. It was so much fun really thinking about these books and thinking about my See what I say about Fallen. It was a lot of fun thinking about what albums I would pair with what books and just the reason behind each of those choosings, and it was so much fun. If you would like to see another video like this, because I have so many more albums as you can clearly see, and of course more books, let me know in the comments down below. I'd definitely be willing to make another one of these. It was a lot of fun, honestly. And bonus, if this is a video that you think is fun and want to do, please steal this idea, tag me in your video. I would love to get more music recommendations and book recommendations. Drop in the comments down below or make your video and let me know. But that's gonna go ahead and be it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!